So we're reading from Srimad Bhagawatam, 3rd Canto, Chapter 9, and I'll read text 43 to 44 at the end of that chapter.
Is the microphone on?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm.
Okay, love.
Sarva.
Sarva.
I'm sorry. Forgot. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
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 Sarva Veda Mahinidam Sarva Veda Mahinidam Atmanatman Atma Yonina Atmanatman Yonina Praja Srija Yata Purvam Praja Srija Yata Purvam Yash Cha Mai Anusrite Sarva Veda Mahinidam Atmanatman Yonina Rajasraja Yatha Purvam Yascha Maya Yanoshrite Sarva Veda Mahinidam Atmanatman Yonina Rajasraja Yatha Purvam Yascha Maya Nusrite Sarva Veda Mahinidam Atmanatman Yonina Rajasraja Yatha Purvam Yascha Maya Nusrite. Others?
Sarva Veda Mahinidam Atmanatma Yonina Praja Srija Yatha Purvam Yascha Maya Nusrite
Sarva, all, Veda Mayena, under complete Vedic wisdom, Idam, this, Atmana, by the body, Atma, you, Atma Yonina, directly born of the Lord. Praja, living entities. Srija, generate,
generate,
yatha purvam,
yatha
as it was hereinbefore,
as it was hereinbefore,
ya,
Ya,
which,
which,
cha,
cha,
also,
also,
mai,
mai,
in me,
in me,
anusrite,
anushrite,
lie.
lie.
Translation. By following my instructions, you can now generate the living entities as before. By dint of your complete Vedic wisdom and the body you have directly received from me, the supreme cause of everything. Please repeat. By following my instructions,
By following my instructions,
you can now generate the living entities
you can now generate the living entities
as before,
as before,
by dint of your complete Vedic wisdom
by dint of your complete Vedic wisdom,
and the body you have directly received from me,
and the body you have directly received from me,
the supreme cause of everything.
the supreme cause of everything.
So I'm going to read text 44 and the translation. Matre uvacha tasmaivam jagat shastri pradana purushiviraha vachidam sivena rupena kanjana vasyodahi. Translation. The sage Maitreya said, after instructing Brahma, the creator of the universe, to expand the primeval Lord, the personality of Godhead in his personal form as Narayan disappeared. Purport. Before his activity in creating the universe, Brahma saw the Lord. That is the explanation of the Chatu Shloki Bhagavatam. When the creation awaited Brahma's activity, Brahma saw the Lord, and therefore the Lord existed in his personal form before the creation. His eternal form is not created by the attempt of Brahma, as imagined by less intelligent men. The person of Godhead appeared as he was before Brahma, and he disappeared from him in the same form, which is not materially tinged. Thus ends the Bhagawatam purports of the 3rd canto, 9th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavatam, entitled Brahma or Brahma's Prayers from Kirtan. Om Gyan Timirandishya Gunanjana Shlakaya Chaksurmilitam Tasma Shikirima Shri Chaitanya Manobistam Shapitam Kule Svayamukaramayam Jadavisvadyantam Vande Ham Shri Guru Shri Tapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavam Cha Shri Rupam Sakchatam Sarvatnatam Tam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadhutam Vishasitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Prada Saha Shri Vishakam Tamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Nina Bando Jagapate, Gopi Shai Gopi Kanta Radha Kanta Namaste, Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radha Vanami Shri, Vishvan Sudhini Hari Pranami Hari Puri. Vancha Kalpatu Vyascha, Kripa Sindhi Vicha, Pitana, Padunga, Vaishnava, Namaha. So, this Srimad Bhagavatam is a spotless Purana. So just by hearing the words of Srimad Bhagavatam, in particular the words of the pure devotee, we all make spiritual advancement, even if it's spoken by an imperfect speaker. So we see here that Brahma's prayers for creative energy has been described. When Brahma realized his service to the Lord, he prayed. Now, when Brahma was first created, he was, you could say, in ignorance. Now, we understand most of us, when we're born, we're in ignorance, without knowledge, what the proper course of action is to take. And even Lord Brahma, when he came from the lotus stem of Garbhadakshay Vishnu, he was contemplating his situation, who he was, where he's going, what the goal of life was. And he even proceeded to climb down from that lotus stem. And he almost came close to the body of Krishna. But because his understanding wasn't there, he came back up. And the Lord revealed to him within the heart proper knowledge of who he was and what his situation was and what he was supposed to do. And similarly in the same way, as we are all born into the material world, due to our past experiences or past actions, that we come to this world not knowing. We are in a state of ignorance. So when one comes into knowledge of one's particular situation, who he is, where he's going, what the goal of life is, one becomes self-satisfied, or is stated as Atmaram. One becomes self-satisfied from within. So this is the understanding, is that we have to come into knowledge. We have to come to knowledge by continually reciting Vedic scriptures, by reciting the mantras, and to come into a particular understanding. And knowledge in of itself does not necessarily bring realization, because there's Gyan and Vigyan. There's the Gyan where we can study knowledge of all different departments of understanding. You can go to many universities and study psychology and philosophy and so many other areas of understanding. And one can be very intelligent at a material level, but just because one has knowledge, it does not mean it's realized. Realized knowledge means, particularly in the Vedas here, is that one has to practice and recite in one's own life. One has to not necessarily just be a believer, but actually a feeler in the sense of experiencing Vedic knowledge. This is the ultimate conclusion of the Vedas, is understanding Krishna as he is within realized knowledge. That, again, there are so many people that know so much, but knowing is not enough. One must actually experience this. And so this was Brahma's position, that he was in, you could say, in one sense, in a particular type of ignorance, but he came to the proper light because Krishna revealed within the heart what his duty was as his service to propagate progeny within the universe. So in the same way, we can all have some knowledge by reading the Vedas, but we have to actually experience it by putting it into practical practice. And by doing this, we can actually understand. And within this, we understand that even Brahma, that he was given this this mantra, the Gayatri mantra, is described that this Gayatri mantra is the second birth, right? When one takes this Gayatri mantra is the second birth. That we understand that our first birth is that we're born to the material world. But the second birth is when we actually get this sacred mantra coming from the spiritual master. And by reciting this, one can get this great understanding and realization. And it described a little bit about this Gayatri mantra, that the sacred Gayatri mantra has been chanted on the banks of holy rivers in India for millennia. One can visualize a timeless Brahmana sitting with his legs folded with a traditional lotus posture, looking out into the countless waves of the Ganges, who wrapped around his finger the sacred thread, Upavita, on which the mantra is chanted, and mutters the understanding that only he and the Lord can hear. And this Brahma Gayatri mantra, known as all the Brahmanas to the Vaishnavas, based on esoteric texts such as the Rig Veda 3:62:10, the Gayatri mantra is extremely confidential and thus cannot be repeated here. It is whispered by the teacher into the disciple's right ear. The mantra pays homage to the sun and is chanted 3 times a day. As the sun rises, when it is high in the sky, and when it sets, the Vaishnava tradition, the sun represents God, because like God, it illuminates all that is. The Vaishnavas chant several Gayatri mantras in addition to the Brahma Gayatri. They chant 2 prayers to the Guru, 2 to Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, 2 to Krishna. Although Vaishnavas consider all 7 of these mantras to be Gayatris, in technical sense, they are not to be actual Gayatri. A mantra should be included in the words Vidya Mahe, the approach of Dimahi, the path, and the Pradodhijai, the goal. Interestingly, this aligns the Gayatri mantra with the Srimad Bhagawatam, the most important of all Vaishnava scriptures. So those 3 underlined are Sambandha, Vidamne, Abhideya, Dimhi, and Pirojana. Thus, the Gayatri Mantra and the Srimad Bhagavatam are one in meaning and purpose. Both lead to the path of liberation. The 7 Gayatri mantras, chanted by Vaishnavas, are actually Gayatris in the strictest sense. The other 3 mantras are nonetheless equally important. For one of them is introductory prayer to the Guru, another is simply introductory prayer to Mahaprabhu, and a third is the Gopal mantra, considered one of the most important mantras of the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, as established the supremacy of the gopis and their unalloyed love for Krishna. Deep meditation in all these mantras bring the practitioner to a state of clear consciousness and pure goodness. This allows the more profound practice of the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So we understand that Srila Prabhupada was so merciful into giving people in the West, they came from any degraded background, to actually elevate themselves. And as it's understood that by the second initiation, this is the second birth, that one comes into spiritual enlightenment by understanding this Gayatri Mantra. And so similarly, this is the same position that Lord Brahma was in. That at first he tried on his own to understand who he was and what his position was. But then through Krishna coming through the hearts of Lord Brahma, he understood his position, what his purpose in life was. So this is also why it's so important that one follow the instructions of the spiritual master. Because we understand that the spiritual master is the via medium to Krishna. That our minds are telling us so many types of things. And even we may be thinking that maybe I should do this for Krishna, maybe I should do that for Krishna. We're thinking on our own. So that's fine that we do that, but it's always good to ask the spiritual master, what do you think of this? Should I do this or should I not do this? And then we can understand what to do and what not to do. We may even think in certain situations that it may sound actually very good, but we actually have to do what's actually pleasing, right, to Krishna. We understand by pleasing Krishna is by pleasing the spiritual master. So just the other day, we were, Radesh was cutting the banyan tree in the back, and he was saying, well, do you know what you're going to do in 10 years? What's your 10-year goal? And then I was telling him. And then I asked him what he wanted to do, and he was mentioning some of the things. But one of the most important things that he mentioned is that he first had to ask his spiritual master what he thought. And I was telling Radesh what my plans were, but I didn't mention that part. So I was mentioning all my concocted ideas of things that I wanted to do. So later on I was reflecting on it. I was thinking this is the proper way. That one should actually ask the spiritual master what one should do. And so what was nice for me when I actually took initiation, I took initiation in LA. It was actually a dual initiation. It was Aranath Maharaj and Giriraj Maharaj. And they both gave very nice talks, but after we were initiated, they were speaking, and then my spiritual master, he emphasized the point that to us in particular, the ones that had just got initiated, that he said that we take instructions from him, but we also take instructions from other senior devotees in advancing knowledge. And so that was very instructive for me, because he was saying that that one should actually take instruction from senior devotees to guide one in the proper way. And so similarly in the same way, we all have the opportunity of making our lives perfect in this life by taking proper instruction, by knowing what to do and what not to do. And we, as I described before, that we were talking about activities and modes of energy. So we understand that there's activities in the mode of goodness, activities in the mode of passion, activities in the mode of ignorance. And the Bhagavad Gita clearly explains what those particular activities are. But we can even understand that we may be in a particular mode, even the modes of goodness. And again, they're kind of like springboards to transcendence. And that even if we're in particular modes of goodness, they're not necessarily spiritual. And to understand what is spiritual is to get confirmation through the spiritual master, or people that are related to the spiritual master, godbrothers of the spiritual master. And then we actually know what to do and what not to do. So this is a wonderful chapter because it's very instructive for us and how we can actually perfect our lives and go back home to God. That we understand that Krishna comes in the heart through the person that is clear from the modes of material nature. And again, this sometimes can be tricky because we may be thinking, even if we're in the modes of goodness, that what we're doing is correct. That even in the particular types of modes of energy, we can kind of get diluted, right? It's understood that even if one is in the mode of goodness, one can be very proud of that particular position. One can think that, oh, I'm so intelligent, I'm knowing so much, I'm a vegetarian, I'm active in so many, helping so many people in so many ways, but we can actually become deluded within that sense. So therefore, it's always important that we always take a humble position, that we understand that by taking this humble position, we can actually learn from so many types of personalities. We can learn from other people that may not necessarily be in a spiritual practice. We can understand that what to do and what not to do. Oftentimes we can learn from what to do in life, but oftentimes we can understand by particular situations of what not to do. Generally, you can just pick up a newspaper and see so many of the problems within society that people have. And just from learning from what others' mistakes, we can actually advance in life. Because we see that even the great world leaders, or great politicians, or great thinkers, even with all their wonderful knowledge and expertise, they always face sometime or another because they're not following the Vedas, or they're not following proper instruction. They get it all wrong. So even though one may be very advanced materially, but it's not enough to be advanced materially. One must take proper guidance. And through this guidance, one can make proper decisions. And it's very important because even if people within society, like we find President of the United States, or different people, different leaders in different parts of the world, that they may come from great universities, they have great knowledge and understanding, but they don't know what the real goal of life is. They think maybe the goal of life is to have a strong economy, or to provide many jobs for people, or to have so-called, what they may call, in their definition of world peace. But if you don't know what all those things really mean, they become useless, and people become frustrated. And we see that from time and time again. It's always interesting when somebody, every time that someone becomes elected president of the United States, whether one's voting for a Republican or Democrat, each party is thinking, oh, we have such great hopes in this personality that it will make the economy better, and if the economy is stronger, and we have a strong economy, and there's many jobs, then life will be very happy and satisfied. And then so many people are putting so much hope and faith into these leaders, but time and time again that we find that even if Democrats or the Republicans get their chosen leader, that everyone becomes disappointed. And oftentimes people don't want to recognize that because it may hurt their false ego that they voted for a particular person that let them down. And it's always amazing that every election cycle, people are always putting great hopes into this, that something's going to be different. But we can see that despite whoever is elected, that there's always difficulties. There's always going to be those problems. Even if the economy is fixed to a certain extent and people are making lots of money, lots of wealth, they're still frustrated in so many particular ways because people don't have real knowledge. They actually have some form of knowledge, how to be expert in a particular field, but they don't have realized knowledge. And that realized knowledge is to understand who we are, where we're going, and what the goal of life is. If the goal of life is just to attain as much material possessions as possible, then why aren't so many other people happy? So many people have those things, but yet they're unsatisfied in so many particular ways. And sometimes the notion may come up sometimes. People may think that it's really let me just give all my material things away, right? Let me renounce my material things, because this is more of a spiritual position. But that's more of an external source, because we understand that even people that want to give all their things away, if they're not understanding from within what's going on, then they miss the whole point. Sometimes you see within the countercultural hippie movement that they have this idea that let me just kind of divorce myself from the society because the society is going in the wrong direction, and just renounce all my material things. But yet not giving up, renouncing the real things from the heart, which is lust, greed, anger, envy, and illusion. These are the real things. And so we can't necessarily understand someone's position from an external point of view. We may think that someone that has lots of wealth, lots of material things, we think, oh, he must be a very materialistic person because he has so much things and this is his goal. But this is not necessarily the case. There are many great personalities that have great wealth, and they're actually very spiritual, and they know how to use their money in the proper way. You understand that Ambarish, he came from a very wealthy family, and he was born into a life of privilege and what have you. But with his intelligence, he knew how to properly use it, how to use it in Christian service. And so, he's doing wonderful things. And if we think about that, that's actually a great austerity in the sense of having so much and being able to give so much of it away. It's easy to say, to write someone off as a materialist because they have lots of material things. But without really understanding someone's consciousness, we will never know. And so sometimes we find this in spiritual circles. We may judge people from external perspectives. But that's, unless we really know that person's heart, then it's unfair to judge that person. And so, similar in the same way, we may see that someone may have, decided to renounce so many material things, but yet he hasn't given up the envy within his heart of trying to be the Lord that all he serves. So we see sometimes this is within the mind lives, right? That wanting to be one with God, to be God, to understand that this is the idea that everyone is God and you are God. Right? This is a very dangerous philosophy, and if one actually thinks about it, it doesn't really add up, and it doesn't really make a lot of sense. If you're God, why are you limited in so many particular ways? Why do you have to use the bathroom? Why are you limited in so many particular ways? It's very simple, but some people kind of get into that. Oftentimes you can even see that if it's really just the case of not having anything, that makes someone more spiritually advanced. But we can see even sometimes, we see many homeless people, and even though they don't have anything, they have their attachments of their shopping cart, and there's so many stuff that they have in that shopping cart, and they have thinking of such great value. We can understand that's just another material type of attachment. So the real thing is to purify the heart by engaging in this practice of bhakti yoga, and by that looking at our heart and trying to come to that purificatory stage of using everything in the service of Krishna. The material desire to enjoy with this material world is so strong, and it may take some of us many, many lifetimes to attain that goal. But Prabhupada encourages us in so many particular ways is to why not go back home, back to God in this life? Right? And it is possible. And it only takes one sincere endeavor to do so. It only takes sincerity. It doesn't take any type of material qualification. One doesn't need a PhD. One doesn't need that great material wealth. All one has to have is a sincere heart of service. To serve the Lord in a particular way that will please the Lord. And this is actually what we're looking at, is to actually please Krishna. And we understand by pleasing Krishna, when we please the spiritual master, we're actually pleasing Krishna. So we should, in all particular ways, try to purify our consciousness. And we have this chance in our day-to-day lives to practice this in a day-to-day moment. That's if we feel envious of another person in any particular way, the cure is that we should serve that person. If we're feeling that we are trying to enjoy some material facility in some particular way, let us try to provide for that material service. Let us do anything that we can to purify our senses. We may feel angry. We have anger. Anger in itself is not necessarily a bad thing, but if it's directed in the wrong way, we run into a lot of problems. If we feel angry, let's use that energy of anger to push on this Krishna consciousness movement. Let us use that, because anger can have great energy within it. If we have our minds can control that anger, we can actually use that energy in great ways. And so we all have opportunities in many particular ways to advance in Krishna consciousness. And that is, as long as the sincerity in the heart is there, that everyone and anyone can go back to Godhead. And Srila Prabhupada wanted us to go back to God in this life. And if one thinks about it, all we have to do really is to go back to Godhead, is to just surrender this one life fully to Krishna. And this can be done. And we develop this faith through the hearing process of hearing, of remembering, by engaging in the Lord's service. And through this, our lives become perfect. So Brahma is giving us an example here. He's the greatest servant of the Lord Brahma. And in his dilemma, even Lord Brahma, he's one of the greatest personalities of the servants of Krishna. He was perplexed, right? We understand through various parts of Srimad Bhagawatam that Brahma had many difficulties in many different areas. So what to speak of us? But despite the difficulties that Brahma had, he continued to go on. And so similar in the same way, we also may run into many difficulties, but we should see those difficulties or those obstacles is actually helping us to continue to go on. We actually see the obstacles as the way. That we don't see the obstacles as something that's preventing us, but actually these obstacles can actually reform our character and make us stronger than we were before to continue to go on. Because difficulties will come. This place is a place of suffering, despite what any commercial or any person tries to tell you, that this place is a place of suffering. Birth, death, old age, disease. That we can't prevent these difficulties from coming. And they do come, when we least expect it. So the thing is, we should always be ready that today, someone may criticize my character. Someone may stab me in the back. Someone may try to attack me. Someone may say false things about me. Someone may try to violently attack me. We should understand that this material world, we should actually expect these things to happen on a day-to-day basis. And therefore, our minds are more prepared for it. But if ultimately we're in Krishna consciousness and there's respect, that no matter what happens, we'll actually pass all these tests that come. Because the tests do come. And sometimes these tests are meant to see where our sincerity is at. And even if we don't pass these tests, we can actually learn more from it. Oftentimes, if one has the proper consciousness, the proper intelligence to understand that even if I fall down in a particular situation, if I lose in a particular situation, it actually gives me more opportunity to reflect that situation and to understand that what did I do right, what did I do wrong, how can I change this thing, how can I become a better person because of it. Sometimes when we're always getting lots of opulence or winning in a particular game or in a particular situation, the glorification is there, we're more happy and satisfied, we're kind of enjoying that gratification to that certain degree. But oftentimes, when we lose in particular situations, it gives us more opportunity to reflect of how can I do things different, and how can I become better because of it. So, Lord Brahma is actually instructing us through his example here. And we can perfect our lives by following in the footsteps and perfect our lives with understanding knowledge as it is, to realize knowledge, what Srila Prabhupada has given us. So is there any questions or comments?
That last statement you made reminded me, someone in India, it could be an apocryphal story, but someone mentioned that Hiranyakashipu had some sort of gayatri that he was supposed to chant at a particular time in the Daitya line. And he was about to sleep through it, but Paramatma woke him up just in the nick of time so that he could, quote unquote, win, like you were mentioning, so that he could see, see how great I am. I don't even miss a single thing ever. And he could continue building up that pride so he could be smashed. But I like that point that sometimes failure is the pillar of success. When we meet difficulties in devotional service, it's humbling, it sees where we can improve. And then you made a point at the beginning of class, you were mentioning that we have this certain theoretical knowledge. I think you were basing it on the first verse that you read, where Brahma is now acting on the instructions that he received. And although you may have theoretical knowledge, once you actually become engaged in that service, then it becomes practical knowledge. And I see sometimes, especially from the last verse we heard Maharaj giving class, that theoretical knowledge, the eyes experiencing the warmth of the sun, it's theoretical. But the body with affection is directly experiencing that. So you may be so learned, so this, so that, but unless you have actual affection for the Lord, actual affection for the devotees, then it doesn't transfer into practical service. I know that a loving relationship with the devotees is to, speak confidentially, serve prasad. I know all that. But if you're not actually doing it, then where's the affection? So I was appreciating those two comments kind of sandwiched around your class.
Thank you. Yes?
I was wondering when, when Krishna or whatever showed his form to Narayan, his personal form is Narayan, would that be his forearm form?
Narayan, yes. Form from Narayan.
There are different opinions on that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Please can you elaborate on that?
In the Bhagavatam, it seems very Narayanish, but in the Gopaltapani Upanishad, says that the Lord showed himself to Brahma and Gopalesh, dressed as a coward.
Interesting.
I did not know that.
Thank you. Okay. She.
Just a quick comment. Class reminded me of something I read one time for an instruction. The only price that we can pay for devotional service is the intense greed.
Yes, Lily, agreed. That yes, we just have to have this intense greed. Sometimes a layperson may think that being greedy isn't that's very materialistic. We understand we have these particular desires, but if we use them instead of Krishna, they become spiritualized. So yes, we must have intense greed, right? Intense greed intense greed to serve the Lord. And I was thinking, I think I was telling Radesh here the other day that I remember when I first came to Krishna consciousness, I was at a darshan with 3-day Nanda Maharaj, and it was like his, I think, 25th or anniversary of taking sannyas. And towards the end, he started, throwing out cookies to everybody. And there was this Guru Kuli boy, he was like maybe 10 or 11 or something. And then Maharaj threw the cookie, and I almost had it on my hand, and the kid just kind of like pushed me out of the way and then took the cookie. And I was thinking, at the time, I was thinking, man, why did you do that? I was like really mad. I was like, that was really rude. And then later I thought about it, I was like, no, he was right. He was greedy. He was more greedy than I was. I was just trying to be polite and nice and take a nice little cookie, but I didn't have enough greed. So this boy had more greed for me, so he actually taught me more than what I thought I knew at the time. So yes, we must have great greed. And what's interesting also is that sometimes you see this a lot on Sankirtan. I have this experience of distributing books, particularly on Christmas marathons, and we're all trying to beat each other. maybe not always the best conscience in the sense of trying to ultimately get to Krishna, but that we've been very greedy to please the Lord. And I remember another same kind of story that oftentimes many people that have done book distribution, particularly at airports, you would see a lot of military people that come through, and particularly the young military men were like some of the best people to distribute books to, because there were just one, like kind of like in the military, they train you up to take orders, listen, and obey. So it was kind of like that. So we just always knew anytime we saw a military guy, we're just like, okay, the radar's on, let's go after him. And so me and this one other devotee, he was a little older than me, and we were both like kind of standing together, and we saw this one military guy, and he was maybe, I don't know, 20 or 30 feet away, and we saw him right away, and we kind of looked at each other, and we kind of raced after him, and he was like a little bit ahead of me, and he went to the guy, and I was a little behind him, but as he was going to him, I kind of edged him out of the way and pushed him out of the way and distributed the book to the military. And the guy was just thinking, we were probably thinking later on, because we were really thinking, like, wonder what he was probably thinking. You know, he's like, saw both these people racing at him, and the other guy pushes him out of the way. And then I distributed the book to him, and he gave me a few books to him, and he gave me $40, $50. We always knew we could get like $30, $40, maybe $50, $100 sometimes from one person. So we knew it was good. And so he left, he took the book, he gave the donation. And everybody comes up to me, he looks at me, he's like, and this person actually, he was from Croatia. He was in the military at one time, and he had a really thick accent. And he looked at me like he wanted to kill me. He's like, Prabhu, why did you do that? But then he smiled and he said, you were more greedy for it than I was, so you deserve it. So this is, like I say on television, don't try this at home, folks. But the idea is that we should develop greed to serve the Lord. Okay, Srimad Bhagawatam ki?
Yes, greed is good, sir. Yes.
Who's going to be first in line for prashad?